Hey everybody, Terry here, 2-6 Golfer. Guys, welcome to the 2-6 Club and Body webinar on how we're going to do what? Be more consistent, get more distance, lower our scores. Now, when we talk about the swing flaws, and we've talked about this extensively on this webinar, hitting fat, hitting thin, hooking and slicing. When we accumulate those swing flaws, what happens is if our swings are not fixed from the center, then we have to apply what I call swing patches. And it's these swing patches that we all hear subliminally in our minds, in our heads, when we look at golf videos. Now what do I mean? Well, here's what I mean. If we don't know how, or if we're not taught to fix, stop swaying, stop twisting, okay? If we're not taught how to fix that, and if we continue to do it, okay, from this position here, too much weight on the trail side, now we have to have, again, what I call swing patches, to try to patch up all the flaws that we have on our takeaway and our backswing. So when we get too far back behind the ball, the first thing that we have to do, or try to do, we have to try to fire our hips. And in firing our hips or firing our lower body, that kind of brings us over the top. Because again, we've got too much weight back here, we've already twisted too much. So when we fire hips, our arms now start to come over the top. So firing the hips is a swing patch, because guys, you're not supposed to fire your hips on the downswing. Okay, the arms and the hips drop together if you stay centered. But for the sake of this argument, because you've swayed too much and you twisted, now you're firing hips. Now the club is starting to come over the top. Now you're going to have to try to shallow the club to prevent it from coming over the top. Now you've got to try to shallow it, okay, because you never fixed your twist and sway. And so now when you're shallowing the club, now you've got to try to manipulate the club face to where you're trying to square the club face at impact. So again, twisting and swaying here, hips firing is a swing patch to try to get you back on your center. As you fire hips, your arms now come over the top. Now you've got to try to shallow the club face or shallow the shaft to somehow get back into position. And then when you shallow the shaft, now you've got to somehow try to square the club face of the ball, because your last resort is to kind of like flip at the ball to try to make up for all the swing flaws that you had in the beginning. So those are the three or four major swing patches that we hear that they're not identified as swing patches. They're identified as how you swing the club. But again, if you're not correcting this, then there's no way you can swing without a swing patch. But if you correct this and stay centered, you don't need all those swing patches. You don't need to lead the club with your lower body. You don't need to fire your hips. You don't need to shallow the club face. You don't need to try to square the club face at impact. Because if you do it right, like we do here at 2-6, all those positions happen more readily because you're already in the right position to begin with on your center. So if I were to hit this little chip shot here, and just employ all the principles of what this is, all I'm going to do is I'm going to stay centered, create space, leave my space, and drop through the ball. That's all I'm doing. In other words, when you take all the motion out of your swing, there's no motion to put back. Okay, everything is what? Everything's right in line, and you're hitting through the ball. Everything's right in line. So you have to take the motion out of your swing. And the motion, again, I'm talking about is quit twisting and swaying. You're causing too much motion back here to be corrected on the downswing. Okay, so we have to understand, we don't need those swing patches if we do what? If we correct it from our grip and posture to begin with. And again, the swing patches are that you have to lead with the lower body. You got to fire your hips. You got to try to shallow the club face or shallow the shaft, and then you're going to have to try to square the club face at impact. Guys, that's just too much going on, okay, in the 1 second you have to get down and through the ball. Okay? Hope that helps. Talk to you soon.